FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is the first day of April 2020. Well, we're in the grip of the pandemic. What are we to do about it? Well, somebody who's been helping female entrepreneurs, who's made it her life, her name is Beate Chelette, and it's interesting, just came into contact with her work recently and really has made a career out of helping women get ahead. Beate, you've been doing this for a while. How did you wind up finding your place in the world?
Good question. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. And I found my place because I was... I call myself disaster proof. This pandemic is literally the 7th disaster I'm surviving. And I realized that as I had gotten out of, 10 years of just disaster after disaster, that I had figured out how to, sort of manage all the things that life can throw at you. And being, originally from Germany, I do like systems and processes. And then I was able to sell my company to Bill Gates for millions of dollars, from $135,000 in debt to being a self-made multimillionaire in 18 months.
That's pretty good.
I know, right? And then I was hired by this Bill Gates company, and I realized that what women go through in the workplace and what women go through as entrepreneurs really is not compared. It cannot be compared to what men go through. And so I put myself in service of helping entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, and women in leadership to really figure out how can we step up to our maximum potential.
And it's so interesting that you say that. So I grew up in the 60s and had a stay-at-home mom. And then one day a letter came in the mail and basically said that the family business was broke because of an embezzlement. And my mother had never worked a day in her life. And off she went to New York City every day to try to save this business, which she did. And she really succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. The business became very successful, largely as a result of her work. So me as a male entrepreneur, I've never really looked at women differently in the workplace. And I don't know if I'm wrong or if it's my acceptance level is so high, because I always welcome a woman's perspective in business because, women perceive the world differently than men. We can all agree upon that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I commend you for that. I actually luckily work with a lot of men that have that elevation of thought where they understand that women, have interesting opinions and ideas to add to the whole mix. So there are a lot of men like that out there. But what I refer to is a lot of times that the systems are set up by men for men that only had to work for men. And so because the system is so set up in the way it operates, is that when women come into the system, they either have to conform to this system, the business system, and the financial systems and the way everything works, or they are not going to win or get ahead as much as men do. And this has a lot to do, obviously, with the women are having children. It has a lot to do with just how our habits are, how we view women, even though the perception is not true. We have the data. The data very clearly says women are phenomenal business owners. One woman on a board of directors in a financial institution can give you up to 66% higher return on investment. So if I'd go to a banker, Carrie, and I'd say to a banker, hey, I have one tip for you that could, increase your return on invested capital by 66%. Would you go do it? The banker would say yes. And then I would say, put one woman on the board, and he says, can't do it.
Do you think there's jobs or there are careers that women really should avoid because it just doesn't go with the female character. And I'm not talking about physical jobs. I'm not talking about ditch digger, whatever. Women can do these jobs. But is there some area that women really should just stay away from?
I don't really think so. I believe that ultimately, Carrie, our objective isn't to say women are this or men are that, but to recognize that also not all men are like that and not all women are like that, because at the end of the day, we're all people. So I believe that when we broaden, I call this the sliding scales of balanced leadership. If broaden the objective to say, there are men who have female attributes and there are women who have male attributes. Why don't we allow people to express themselves however they want to express themselves? I'm not an overly emotional person, even though, I've been emotional lately, and not all men are hard-charging winners. My brother is a very emotional person. So if we are allowing more attributes in leadership, which I know you deal with and talk about all the time, then suddenly it becomes more acceptable to be uniquely you versus conforming to these standards that don't really work anyway.
Yeah. So you call yourself the growth architect and, actually helping business owners take steps to build and scale their business. And you've done it yourself. What does that consist of exactly?
So I built something that's called the 5-Star Success Blueprint. And I found that in order to build a business, there is a very specific sequence of steps that you go through. So the first one is where you take the talent and you turn it into a business, where you flush out, what is it? Who am I? What am I really good at? What comes naturally good to me? And what is the uniqueness of this business? The second step is how do you sell more and feel good about it? Because once you know what it is, you need to start selling it. The third part is authority platform building. Now, how do you tell the world, what you're doing and what are the channels, the marketing channels, the social media channels that you're using to get your message out? The fourth one is leadership, and I call it balanced leadership, because we want people to recognize that in order to really grow a business to that next level, there comes a point where you switch from business owner to business leader, and you have to manage more versus being in it all the time. So that's a shift. And then the final step is the growth architecture itself. How do you double, triple your numbers by building the business based upon, the numbers, the data, organizational charts. Right now I do emergency personal planning, when people get back to business, who's going to come back first, who's going to come back next. So really there's a step to it. So how do you set it up? How do you grow it? And how do you build it? And how do you scale it? And then how do you sell it?
Yeah. So exit strategy. And what I find really interesting, combining this with what you said before, that your life has kind of gone from one disaster to the next, not in a maybe perhaps a literal sense, but experiential. You've gone through many disasters. So this one, COVID-19 pandemic, it's just another disaster. And we know that when we have these situations, there are winners and there are losers. So if I'm your client, how do I become a winner from this rather than becoming a casualty?
Good question. So first of all, I want everybody to be really clear that a disaster or crisis management, which we're in, has three specific components to it. The first one is survival. That's where we're all in. What does it mean? How do I take care of my kids? How do I take care of my mental health? How do I take care of my family? How do I protect them? How do I stay healthy? How do I make my business survive? Am I going to take my money from? So these are all survival elements. So I've seen some coaches out there that said, this is the time to grow your business. It's not. This is the time to make sure your business survives. So the first part is, just focus on the lean stuff and on priority items. The second part of a disaster is opportunity. So now you see already, now GM is making masks with GE. So now we see opportunities are popping up. We're seeing manufacturers retooling their machines to produce certain things that are in high demand. We see transportation companies are, suddenly in big demand. Who knew that Zoom was going to be the stock we all would want to own? So in every disaster, there's an opportunity, and there's an opportunity for every business in a disaster. So the second step is to actively look for it. So that's what I do with my clients right now, is where I go on these 90-minute, I call it my crisis deal. So it's 90-minute, 30-day strategy sessions where you really figure out how to through the next 30 days and where is the hidden opportunity in this. And then finally, the third part is the recovery, because as I said, when you get back from this, and it will blow over like they all will, there will be a recovery, even though it doesn't feel like it right now.
Yes.
But what do you do? How do you financially plan that out? Who are you going to bring in, and how do you get out of and recover?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you broke it down into phases, and it makes total sense, because the first duty of every organism on the planet, whether it's a natural organism or a man-made structure, is survival. And it runs very deep. But sometimes, and I know this for myself, it's worked this way, when you just become totally obsessed with survival, sometimes you undermine that goal, because I guess you have to have a plan to survive. You can't just make a it isn't just a statement, I'm going to survive, and that's it. It's like you actually have to take steps to ensure your survival. What do you think the most important step in the survival plan is?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Arcana Corporation is on the verge of bringing the world's highest grade silver mine into production. The Revenue Virginius mine in Colorado has proven improbable silver reserves grading nearly 37 ounces per ton silver, with an all-in sustaining production cost of only US $8 per ounce of silver. The mine is fully permitted with infrastructure already in place, and the company has announced they plan to commence production in 2020. Achieving successful production usually results in a significant upward share price re-rating on the Lassonde curve. Arcana trades under the ticker AUN in Toronto and AUNFF in New York. To learn more, go to arcana.com. That's AURCANA.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Well, I actually have 5 steps in the survival plan.
How did I know that?
Ever so the process-oriented German. I mean, you just can't get it out. Uh-huh. So my first step in survival is make sure you get money now. And I know you deal with money all the time. So I've been telling everybody who will listen, do not spend your cash. Put everything on a credit card, transfer all your credit card balances to 0% offers, increase your lines of credit, get those loans, apply for everything that can keep you liquid. Because even though it might not look like it right now, we don't know if it's going to be 3 months. We don't know if the recovery is going to be 6 months, if it's going to be a year, but you run out of cash, you're dead in the water. So the first step is making sure you have access to money. The second step is, and I'm just going to pause actually, because I know you might have a tip to add for the audience as far as access to money and making sure you stay liquid right now.
Yeah, well, you got to be careful of the credit cards, obviously, but I think that any type of debt is going to have a holiday or a moratorium or some accommodation. So loading up on debt to survive, if that's the way you can conserve your cash, makes a lot of sense. Also, what we're seeing is that the U.S. government to the rescue, and if you've got a business and you have employees or contractors, there's this paycheck protection program, which will pay 2.5 months of your employees' wages so that you retain them. Don't turn your nose up at government, even if you're the kind of person who says, I've never taken a penny from the government in my life and I'm proud of it. This is a situation where you can't be so proud. You got to be a little bit humble. Take the help from where you can get it.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I'm not really the biggest fan of credit card debt, but I do believe that, these types of circumstances warrant for extraordinary measures. If you don't need it, you can always pay it back early and make sure that whatever you negotiate, you have a no penalty for early payback, obviously, which is just a negotiation to be had or a clause to read in the contract, and then you're golden. But if you're out of out of cash, you're done. There's really not much you can do once you run out of cash. My second step to a survival is really stepping into leadership and looking at what do we see in great leaders right now. So Andrew Cuomo, obviously, in California, we see Governor Newsom stepping up. And what is it that the messaging that they have that makes sense? It's honest. It is hard information. It's a lot of communication. It's a lot of detailed conversations and communication. And it has this component. This is what we got to do. We got to get through this together. So look at yourself as stepping up as a leader, because in times like this, people look for leadership. So be that leader, and you will be remembered long after this is done as a leader by the people that have heard your message. The third part is mindset. And this is a tricky one, Carrie, because it is so easy to get sucked into the news and to get, pulled in one way or another. There's the Trump and the never Trumpers, and they're yelling at each other, and that will never change.
Yes.
And you just constantly checking the news and pop around from here to there to there, and you can't believe it. People are so stupid. You have to be very disciplined with where you put your energy right now in order to survive. Otherwise, you teach your brain it's happening again and again and again and again.
Yeah, that's such a great point that I haven't heard anybody make. And I stopped watching television news many, many years ago because I found that it agitated me and made me kind of unhappy as a person. And so turning off the negative energy, because it's all the news, it's all negative energy that's really going to get you down if you let it.
Yes, absolutely. And this perpetual looping around trying to find a solution that is really outside of our control, that, ties back, in leadership. A leader knows what he has or she has control over and what not. We have no control over COVID-19.
Yes.
We have control over our own response to COVID-19 and how I spend my time. And working from home requires you to, have a different mindset versus being at an office where you put on a schedule. You have to give yourself mental breaks. You have to go outside a little bit because we're cooped up all the time. So it really is a different element, and be diligent about that. I mean, this is not business as usual.
No, definitely not. There's certain things, I think you'll agree, qualities that you kind of have to acquire through experience and through maturity. And one of those for me has been calmness of mind. And I just remember 20 years ago, I had a law partner, David, and he used to always tell me, Carrie, the situation is always hopeless, but never serious. And it kind of annoyed me at the time. And this wasn't an original thought. Somebody wrote this a long time ago. Look, we all steal from everybody. I like to attribute my quotes, so I'll attribute it to him and let him figure out who said it. But the point is that what that does is it makes you, immediately when you think of it, you have to smile, and then you have to lighten up, and then you can reset. So I guess what I was going to ask you, Beate, is how do you interrupt the loop, the negative feedback loop that the entire world wants to instill on your brain? And if we paid any attention to it, we would never get anything done. We'd never accomplish anything. You wouldn't be who you are today. So you have to turn off the naysayers. People have legitimate contributions to make to your life, legitimate suggestions, criticisms, but you have to somehow know the difference between what's worth keeping and what's worth just saying thank you for your feedback and just move on with your life, right? And I'm sure women are more susceptible to that in a lot of respects than men because, recent entrance to the career world.
Yes, and I like that you made that observation, because women are natural caretakers, not that men are not. I think men are more fixers and women are caretakers, on a broad scale. And so I believe that the emotional well-being and the worry that women have is exponentially more intense than men do, because men look at a problem very often in a logical or more logical way. Not to say that women are illogical, but because we have a larger amount of emotions, and we're not just our main hormone isn't testosterone, it's estrogen, and so it just comes with a certain physical behavior. And so for us to worry about our children and our family and our moms and our dads and stay home, what are you doing out? Why are you going to store yourself? Let me do that for you. So it's very easy to get completely drawn into this panic. And so again, it's a discipline. And you said it yourself, you turned it off. You have to discipline yourself and turn it off. And if you have to set a timer, and then when the timer goes off, you turn it off. But that's really the key, is a disciplined mindset.
Yeah. And someone once told me, or I read somewhere a long time ago, when you get down, when that starts to get to you, think about prior successes that you've had. Think about things you've done that you never thought you could do, and you surprised yourself. All these things will really help go a long ways towards getting you to where you want to be and filtering out the negativity. Because, it just seems like the media and so much of what you encounter in the world today is just based on negativity. And I always like to say, pessimists have not accomplished very much in the world. The world's accomplishments are made by optimists, right? They really are. And you have to dig deep to find that inner strength, right?
Yes. And I actually say this, I say everything always starts with an idea. And and every original idea is probably called stupid by somebody on whether that was, any invention ever. Just think about that. Somebody says, I have an idea. So if you remember the many times that you have had an idea that then led to you doing something that might not even have worked, but that led to the thing that gave you the idea for the real thing, so now suddenly you're in a different mindset where you say, I've done it before. What are the chances I'm going to be able to do it again?
Yeah. And that really is, you can only have one thought in your mind at a time. You can't have multiple thoughts running around. At least most normal people cannot. So you might as well make it a positive one and an inspiring thought rather than a negative thought. And I think it's normal for human beings to fall into self-critical mode and be overly hard on yourself about things you could have done better, challenges you didn't meet in the way you wanted to. But at the same time, it's easy to just say, I don't want to think those thoughts. I prefer to think about the time where everything was riding on this. It was against all odds, and I did it. And I guess you got to have that optimism to ever start a business. How do you start a business if you're a pessimist? How do you move forward? How do you get out of bed every day? I would just rather be thinking good thoughts about myself and those around me, and till proven otherwise.
Yeah, and I have started to listen to a couple of podcasts that deal with positive mindset and just mindset in general. So I really encourage everyone, like your podcast, to listen to things that fill your brain with good stuff, with positive information, can-do information, because you are that which you associate yourself with. So if this is, what you focus on expands. So focus on good stuff so that can expand more.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more. Well, we kind of have to go now, but I know you guys out there going to want to connect with Beate. Just tell us best place to find you and how to connect on the web.
Yes, so I have actually a page with a couple of free gifts, including a balance planning tool with a schedule for those of you who need to be better with a schedule. So you go to beatechelette.com/Beates-free-gifts and poke around, and I'll send you the link so you can add it to the podcast.
Excellent.
And I welcome any questions. If you want to reach out to me, just email me. My email is my initial B and initial C BC, so bc@beatechelette.com. I'll promise I'll respond to everybody in person.
All right. Hey, it's been a real pleasure. I find your work very inspiring, and it really is universal. I mean, I know you focused on women, but really what you're talking about here applies to every person involved in the struggle of trying to make a living, trying to find your place, trying to find your calling. Obviously, you found yours. I think I found mine. I've met a few other people recently who have found their calling. It's so important. I think it's the only way you can really ever be happy in life, finding that calling. Otherwise, I don't know what I'd be doing, but really appreciate you coming on. Any questions or comments for Beate, myself? The email address is kl@carrielutz.com, Twitter feed @carrielutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network, and that's our website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Again, email kl@carrielutz.com. Beate, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a total pleasure, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Same here. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, Carrie.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.